Welcome back to the Marriage and Real Estate Podcast. We're your hosts, Kevin and Aisha Shelton. And some monumental stuff happened this week.
It did.
It really wasn't.
Not really.
It was the same old
Texas
shiznit. That's not a cuss word. It was the same old shiznit in Texas and in most of the southern states.
Yeah. I mean, we had the election, of course.
Yeah.
And, the world did not change.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing that people have to realize is the regime in power doesn't control your outcomes in your future, because you can vote and you vote your choice, but it doesn't change the fact that you got to get up and get to work regardless of who's in office. So it was very interesting though. And I think the election will have different ramifications on the economy, on the stock market, of course, the real estate market. So let's talk about some of the ways that it will impact us and also some of the ways that it won't, and we need to keep going, right?
Yeah. So after watching the news, which I don't watch very much of, but of course, last night because of the elections, I tuned in until I fell asleep, which wasn't very long, but I did get this. You had, anytime it's a midterm election, and there's a Republican or Democratic president in office, usually they get a not so favorable rating within their 2 years. Everybody's focused on the problems. And so at this election, seats are lost for that party, right? So if you have a Democratic president in office, then they lose seats at the midterm election. And if you have a Republican, vice versa, right? So it kind of comes with the territory. But what I'm really excited about is there are people who we supported this year in their political campaigns, and they were successful. So, shout out to those.
Some were, some weren't.
Some were, some weren't. But I'm thinking of one in particular. Congratulations. I'm not going to say.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so, I mean, I think that, like you said, we still got to get up every day and make it happen. And regardless of who's in office, people who are going to make it happen, get up and make it happen. And I don't care if it's a Republican or Democrat in the office.
I saw a really interesting meme, and it was talking about basically it doesn't matter who's in office because they don't pay your paycheck or something. It was something like that. It had a really funny play on it, but the purpose of it and the meaning of it is very true. Doesn't matter who's in office, you still got to perform. Now, you need to know who's in office and you need to know what their platforms are. You need to know how that impacts your business, and then you kind of pivot around it. So when you're talking about the House changing seats, what does that impact? That impacts tax strategies, right? That impacts some zoning ordinances, some federal dollars being spent, how money's going to come into the economy in your particular city or market. Big thing is 1038 exchanges. That's been a big hot button topic, right? So IRS increasing in staff. That's been a big hot button topic. Of course, Supreme Court. Of course, things like choice and gun rights here in Texas, things like that. But all those things affect business operations. And I think the biggest thing for people who are entrepreneurial or even people who invest is you need to know what the path of progress looks like so you can play accordingly for your investments, right? And it's the same thing you do in the stock market, right? If we're going into a recession, it's a great time to buy. With a regime change, depending on how dollars are flowing, it's a great time to invest. It's how you invest and what kind of things you invest in.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. I think it's important that, I think some people are disconnected from politics for whatever reason, but it's important that you are connected to politics because that should kind of guide you in how you're going to invest and what you're going to invest in.
Especially locally.
Yeah, but real estate is local. You know what I mean? So you can look at the national statistic, the national news, but all real estate is local. And so for us, I know knowing what's coming down the pipeline or what may not be coming down the pipeline because of the changes that were made locally helps us to determine which direction we take our business.
True.
If you're an investor, it should help you to determine which direction you should take your business as well. Yeah. And so I know there's some dollars being cut off from on the city level when it
Yeah.
comes to funding for housing, right? And that was a big deal. And while we wanted certain people to be in office, but if that's not going to happen, since that hasn't happened, what does that mean for our business and how do we pivot? And I think that's why it's important to be connected politically as well.
No, 1,000%. I think back, here recently, you talk about real estate being local. You had a transaction a couple of years ago where you had to call in some favors to even get your transaction to the closing table.
Yeah.
But it's because you had connections and you knew who was in power, you knew who to call, that you were able to kind of push the ball forward in the height of COVID.
Yeah.
And those things happen, right? We're still in COVID times. We're in I'm not going to say
post-COVID market.
It's a post-COVID world, but it's a recessionary world too, right? So you need to know who has their fingers on the button, you know what I mean, or on the flow of money and power and where the dollars are going. Especially being a developer, there's a lot of regulations that are coming down federally that we want to know about, you know what I mean? So we stay with our kind of ears to the ground to find out. But for the everyday person, if I was to think about a couple of key takeaways and a couple of key factors, you want to know who the Harris County, who your local county officials are, whether that's the attorney, the judge, the judges, the clerks, all the people who work in that city office know what's going on with the city.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to know at least, surface level, who those people are and what the agenda is and what direction your city's going in. As long as city and county, I would say city and county, because it really just depends on, where people live. State level, you want to know who, of course, you got your governor, but you also want to know state senators and things like that. In our space in affordable housing, those state senators actually control the dollars that come into the states that go to affordable housing. So those people are important. For people who do multifamily, right? If you multifamily invest, let's say you do Section 8, things like that. Well, who controls a lot of that? The House, the Senate. They're controlling a lot of those dollars. Who's giving people rent, extra rent payments, things like that, or cutting those things off? The House, the Senate. So you want to know those federal people. I know that for us, it's extremely important to have our pulse on where the kind of money flows for down payment assistance and things like that for our buyers, especially with interest rates where they are. So for us, it's important that we know, okay, what are the new target agendas for all these new regimes, right? So if people are changing power, who's going to be in power, and then what's their plan, and how can we make sure that our business is on track to profit from that? Because there's a lot of money made in recessions. There's a lot of money made in governmental changes. You just got to know, that's where all those contracts come from. So when people talking about contracts going out, that's where all the contracts go out. It's all these relationships that are created during these times.
Yeah. And what you said about relationship, I think is important. Business is all about relationships. And if you haven't found that out yet, if you haven't cracked that nut yet, that's probably one of the goals that you and your partner should put on your list, is to create relationships, and not just any relationships. You don't want to be in the room with people who are in the same space as you and in the same place as you. So if it's a bunch of aspiring real estate investors, then you shouldn't hang out in those rooms very often. But from the political aspect, support people's campaigns and put your ear to the ground and build relationships and find out how you can add value to them so that they can add value to you when the time is appropriate, right? But make it genuine. And I really just want to say that too. I think that some people can be ladder climbers, and that will get you so far if it's not a genuine connection that you're making. So I would say definitely make those connections because they're important. They can help guide your business. They can help guide your investments, but also make sure that it's a genuine connection as well. I think that's important.
No, 1,000%. And to second your point, there are no friends or enemies in business.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the same thing in life. And a lot of times people get caught on party lines and it stifles their business. Right. Like, oh, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, so I can't go talk to XYZ. But the reality of the situation is there could be common interests with anybody.
Yeah.
Right. And your goal as a business owner is to find the commonalities, not the points of separation.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, for it to be genuine, you actually do have to have, a point of interest with the people that you're coming across. And if it does come off like, hey, you're just what's in it for me, it's not going to translate how you want it to on the business side. So in the areas where you don't necessarily agree with somebody's day-to-day politics, maybe it's personal, maybe it's sports. We've had the opportunity to connect with a lot of people who might be on the other side of any aisle, which we right in the middle anyway. So, we've had the opportunity to connect with lots of people from lots of different walks of life over lots of personal things, whether it's children or church is a big thing that people, connect with, social groups. All those things give you points of interest to connect to people to. And it doesn't have to be, hey, you voted for XYZ and I voted for XYZ and I can't be your friend. Sometimes you leave your political card on the table and you just get to get in touch with people and who they are as a person.
Yeah. So what were you the most excited or disappointed about with this last election?
You want to be 100% honest?
Maybe.
No, I mean, it's not like crazy. Honestly, nothing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why, and I'll speak on politics for a very brief moment. I do business in Texas. I'm a native Texan. I love Texas. And in that regard, I want to make sure that Texas is a good state for my business. Socially, I have a heart. I really care about my community. I'm very passionate about this. So my feelings span the gambit of the
political parties, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I can't be caught right in the middle. So there's some good things that happened yesterday. There's some bad things that happened yesterday. But I don't feel any different than I did yesterday. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Like I feel like I still have to go forward with doing the same thing. There were some Republicans that I was happy to see in office that I like their platforms. There were lots of Democrats that I like their platforms and I was happy to see in office. And for me, it's finding those commonalities as well as the things that we agree on. I know where I'm at. You know what I mean? If I wanted to move to an extremely liberal state, I'd move to California. And there's some things that they do in California that I don't agree with.
California, my Texas.
I stay myself right here in Texas. I care about a lot of personal topics to me as a father of two daughters and as a card carrying concealed weapon carrier of Texas. I care about a lot of things in Texas too. But I can't be put in one box to just care about one party. You know what I mean? I think for me, it's where do I find the intersections between everybody to make the most out of it.
So I'm more like Mattress Mac. He said he's a capitalist social worker.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And he really is, right? He clearly believes in capitalism.
And with $75 more million.
Okay, 75. Come on, 75 million? $75 million with $75 million. But he does. I mean, he very much has very conservative views. Yeah. That is not a secret. But also his give back to the community is tremendous. And we'll leave it at that. Because
here's the funny part. And here's the thing that I find the most interesting. And we were talking about this the other day. Mattress Mac is a conservative. He's way more dynamic than you put him in a box.
He is very dynamic. I mean, you also saw the memes of him cussing out Phillies
and you also
fans.
saw him on the float with a dang what do you call those chains? Cuban link.
Yes. So he is very dynamic.
He hip hop and old country.
He's just a special person.
I love it. I love it. I want to hug.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So
our son's so sad.
So anyway, I mean, I kind of feel the same way too, right? Like obviously I want our businesses to thrive and we are in a state that definitely supports capitalism. But we also have a heart for the community and you'll see that in everything that we do and the businesses that we have. And so who says that we can't have both besides mass media, right? Like mass media tells us that we either have to be one way or the other, that we have to accept either, this way or that way. And we don't have to. And I'm not going to go off the rails like Kanye West.
No, come on.
Hashtag Kanye.
Nowhere close.
Look, I'm not gonna go off the rails like Kanye West, but I am gonna say like I'm not following the status quo. And so when I woke up this morning, because I did not see polls close and everything that I saw were very preliminary by the time I fell asleep. And I woke up this morning and people were truly dismayed by the outcome of, the election. And I'm like, but y'all still gotta wake up and make it happen, regardless of who's in office. And so that's what we're going to do. That's what we've always done. That's the philosophy that we have. And I know I would encourage all of you, if you're in business, if you're in real estate, you're still going to have to wake up. You're still going to have to show up and show out regardless of who's in office. And so let's do that.
Yep. No, I mean, and as we start to plan for 2023 and we look at our strategic plan and we reset our 5-year, reset our 10-year, we factor these things in, right? We're like, okay, here's the political climate for our business for the next 3 years, the next 4 years. And then how are we going to make sure our business is in alignment for success? And it's the same thing with our investments. It's the same thing looking at the economy. We're going to say, okay, here's the world. And here's our goals. We need to make sure that we can achieve our goals despite the world or in spite of the world versus the world. Man, we can't get to our goals because there's a whole lot of people that let the world dictate whether or not they're successful. And success in the world have very little to do with each other because it's your job to navigate the world to get to your goals, not the other way around. Yeah. The world's not going to navigate you to your goals. And when I look at the people that I study, and I study history throughout time, I look at people who've done incredible things like Booker T. Washington and, Thurgood Marshall and some of the people who were revolutionary for us as an ethnicity and an ethnic group, especially as African Americans, and the climates were never in their favor.
Yeah.
I mean, never, not once. Like, It wasn't even a situation where it was like, oh, yeah, maybe the next 4 years it'll be great. It's like, it's bad every single day, every day. And they still made it happen.
Yeah.
So for somebody to say, hey, yeah, this regime change or whatever stopped me from making it happen. Well, here's this lineage that you have that shows you that it's possible.
Yeah.
In the face of things much harder and much worse than we encounter on a day-to-day basis every day. So you ain't got no excuses. And the world won't tell you how to do it. They'll tell you can't do it. And it's your job to surround yourself by people who, A, are trying to do it, can help you in your journey. You can help them in their journey and ultimately support you in that effort versus finding people who just tell you that you can't.
Yeah. So you know what I miss?
What?
I miss sharing this platform with other couples that are doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to, the coming years. We sit down and plan what the rest looks like. I'm looking forward to the coming year and doing just that, sharing this platform with other people, because we're not the only people that are doing real estate and are married, right? And we want to hear your stories because not everybody resonates with what we have going on, but I'm sure there's plenty of people out there whose story they do resonate with. And I think about Jaquita and her husband.
Yep.
I think about the Winsies and their brokerage. Like, all of their stories were so dynamic and very much different from what our experience is in this marriage and real estate journey. And so, again, I say, if you are married and in real estate, we really would love to have you on our platform. You do not have to be local to Houston. We can definitely do that digitally. And then also getting together with people who are doing what we're doing, because we find that we have the best conversations with couples who have the same challenges that we do, but also sharing the same successes that we do too, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to having more conversations with people that do this and also spending time with y'all too.
You know what I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to you smashing that like button.
So
and
wet.
Hitting that notification bell and following us on all the social media platforms, whether it be Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube.
LinkedIn.
So,
do we have a LinkedIn?
We personally have a LinkedIn.
Okay.
If not, we can start one. But with that being said, I definitely share in Aisha's statement of looking forward to hearing your journeys more in 2023. And yeah, this has been the Marriage and Real Estate Podcast. We out.